Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us for another amazing topic of conversation. And thank you to our sponsors, the Health Channel. So please sign up for their newsletter in anything that has anything regarding your health. And if you need any working spaces, even if it's just for an hour or virtual or a physical space, Alexa's Workspace will help you. And welcome to Aventura Moms on Facebook, a real resource page where you can find anything you need. So Rixy, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, no, thank you for inviting me.
So before we start, because you have a pretty cool story, and I know that you remember a lot when you were growing up in Cuba.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things that really stuck, that you really remember the big differences from when you came?
You mean growing up in Cuba?
Yes, growing up in Cuba.
So my father was always very anti-Castro. So, my house was never a for Castro household. So growing up, my dad had secret meetings with his friends, plotting how they were going to leave the country and, what were the best avenues for our family that was here to kind of like, send for us, whether it was through a different embassy in a different country or just different ways to come. And my dad was a biology professor, and my mom, before I was born, was an elementary school teacher. And so, my dad, once they wanted my father to go and fight in Angola in the war, and this was in the 70s. And my father said, "No, I don't believe in that war, and I don't want to go."
On behalf of Cuba.
In Cuba, on behalf of Cuba, correct. Yes, it was a mandatory military in Cuba. You couldn't say no. And so what they did is they stripped him of his position, being a professor, and he was grounded at home. He couldn't work. And so, that started him doing just odd jobs around just to try to get by. And, in 1980, I was 8 years old. We were visiting my grandparents. We lived in Havana, which was the main capital. And we were visiting my grandparents in this little town called San Jose, which is where they lived. And it was a Sunday. And my dad always carried a shortwave radio with him. And he was listening to the radio. And they said that somebody had opened up the Peruvian embassy by crashing into the embassy. And they knocked down a part of the fence. And that Castro had said that anybody who was an undesirable, that didn't associate with the communist government, could take refuge at the embassy. And so we went back to Havana to our home, packed up some bags, and went to the embassy. And we took asylum. We were part of a group of 10,000 Cubans. And that's really what started the Mario boat lift, because they had to find a way for the Cubans that were in the embassy to come to another, either to the United States, to Peru, because it was a Peruvian embassy, or to another country in South America. But they had to find a way out. And President Jimmy Carter signed the treaty, and so did the state of Florida governor, Bob Graham, at the time, which allowed Cubans and Haitians during a certain period of months that year to be able to come. They had open doors. And so we were able to come, and so were many Haitians that they took advantage of the fact that they were also given carte blanche to come, which was,
But you were in the Peruvian embassy.
Correct.
It didn't matter?
It was Peruvian soil. So any embassy in any country, it's funny because you didn't have
to go to Peru. You were able to come to the US.
We came to the United States. We came on a boat. So, it's funny because I always say I have PTSD from the embassy. So like I recently went on a trip to the islands with like a girls trip. And I said to the driver when they picked us up at the airport, I said, before you take us to the hotel, I need you to take us to the embassy. And my friends know me. They know me. They didn't even ask, and so my friend didn't ask. And so he's like, why? He said, we're going to pass the embassy. I go, okay, just show me where the embassy is. Because I wanted to make sure that I knew where the embassy was in case there was a problem. That's where I was going to go to, So, it's funny. It's PTSD. I can't help it. I don't like to travel much outside the US. I do because I love to travel, but I don't like to travel It's like
Because
a,
of
you
what
know,
you lived
double-edged
through,
sword. Mm-hmm.
because of everything you went through. So tell me about what changed your life, that you became an advocate, and what happened to your son.
So I had my son Devin when I was 26. And right away when he was born, I had a C-section. So they had a general anesthesia. When I woke up in the recovery room, the doctor came to tell me everything that was wrong with my son. My son had many different medical conditions going on. He ended up seeing 17 specialists right out of the hospital, right out of the gate. We had to go see 17 different specialists. He has a condition called Sprengel's deformity, which is a rare disorder. And he's also on the autism spectrum, very high functioning, but he is on the spectrum. And so, you know, when my son was 2, he was in what's called a Milwaukee brace. It's a brace to try to straighten out your back. He has double scoliosis, and he was missing vertebrae and ribs, and one of his lungs didn't really work, and he was missing a kidney, or he's still missing a kidney. So he was giving a terminal diagnosis by an orthopedic surgeon here in Miami. But he gave me the name of a fellow in Texas who was doing a clinical trial called the titanium rib implant. And I back then went on AOL and searched for him. This was in the late 90s. I searched for Dr. Robert Campbell, and I found him at a university. Anyway, I called around and got to him, and it was really hard to get my son into the clinical trial because insurance wasn't paying for it. It wasn't FDA approved. And so I lied to them. I told them that I had the money for the first evaluation, which was $8,500. And I was a single mom at the time. His dad just couldn't deal with his situation. It was a very severe medical situation. And so I lied to them. I had just bought a house. And so I had spent all the money I had putting a down payment on a house. I was a single mom. I had a mortgage. So I told them I had the money, and then I started fundraising, and I started doing garage sales at his school and just fundraising in general. And then I started calling elected officials because I realized that they had the power to help get the implant to the next step with the FDA. And at the time, I reached out to the Miami delegation, me thinking, you know, I lived in Miami at the time, in Miami-Dade County. I'm Cuban. I thought, well, they're going to help me because just, you know, logistics, right? I'm Cuban. I live in Miami. And they didn't. Nobody at that time that was in leadership helped me in Miami. And so someone connected me with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who at the time was a baby senator in Broward County, which is, I live in her district. I'm lucky enough to have lived in her district for now many, many years. She's now a congresswoman, as you know. And Debbie helped me with the state of Florida. There was 3 other children in the state that had the same diagnosis as my son, and the parents were basically waiting for to lose their children. And so we were able to get not just my son, but the other kids had the opportunity to go to Texas to be evaluated, to see if this implant was something that would save their life.
So what was the implant? Because he was missing some vertebrae.
He was missing 8 vertebrae and 6 ribs in ladder form, and the other ribs were fused together like a solid bark of bone.
Okay, so they had to put something in between just to...
Right. So they're vertical. The titanium ribs are vertical. He has 2 of them. Some kids have 1. He has 2 but just because he needed the extra. So it's funny story. Dr. Campbell was an architect, and he decided he didn't want to be an architect anymore. He wanted to become a doctor. So when he looked into medicine, he wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. So he looked at the body like a building. And Dr. Smith, who was his partner in this implant program, was a general surgeon who came to him with a baby that was going to die. And he said, his name was Robert Campbell. He said, Bob, we have to find some way to save this child's life. If we could just straighten out his spine and hold it there and help him grow. So he drew the body like a building and created the titanium rib implant like beams that hold the body up. And then every 4 to 6 months, depending on the child's growth, you have to go back to San Antonio and have it straightened out. So they would click it up 2 more, make it grow. And, you know, at some point the kids would grow out of that set because it was too small for them, and they would have to reimplant them with new ribs. So we went through that program for 15 years. My son is 26. He's had 44 surgeries, and I had to, put a feeding tube for 12 years. feed my son through a feeding tube, go to also nutritional therapy with him so that he could not lose the eating by mouth, because at some point we wanted to be able to wean him off of that. But I became an advocate. Dr. Campbell needed a lot of help in the early days to help it get FDA approved. We also helped pass the Pediatric Device Act of 2007, which created a consortium at the FDA for millions of dollars in funding. As a matter of fact, in 2012, the FDA called me when they were going to renew the grant so that I could present it to the doctors. And my son and I flew to Maryland to the FDA and presented it to the doctors. And there's you could Google my name online in orthopedic devices and find that presentation.
So you have been able to help a lot of kids in the same situation with what you did.
100%. And then also, you know, because I became an advocate, I went and met with Jeb Bush when he was governor to help get families off the waiting list, the waiver, the med waiver. I did a presentation for him. Jeb was wonderful. He actually told me, we need more people like you working in government because you're really thorough. And he did. He took a lot of people off the waiting list during that time. And then Charlie Chris appointed me to serve on the Florida Developmental Disability Council as a council member representing Broward County. And I served under Charlie for 4 years. And then Rick Scott became a governor, and I was reappointed during his term for another 4 years.
So are you still doing advocate, and are you still working with the government?
I am, absolutely. Yes, I'm still an advocate. Now I also served on the FBI Miami's Alumni Association board for many years as a board member, and I served as president for 2 terms until I termed out. I got very heavily involved in a lot of different boards in the Mailman Center, and I got very involved in a lot of different movements for kids and you know, locally and at the state level, helping advocate for different laws. And I've given my testimony in front of to members of Congress, in front of the legislators in the state of Florida, and so forth. And yes, I'm working. I have a thriving business. I've been in business for 10 years. It's our 10th anniversary of my business. And right now I'm currently working, as you know, on the JCC Maccabi Games. I'm working with an amazing team at the JCC. Scott Ehrlich is the CEO of our JCC. Anna Ehrlich is our JCC Maccabi Games director. And we have a great team, Lori Green and others. And I am part of the team. What I do is I create the corporate partnerships with Scott. We go out into the community. We talk to different companies, and you know, we kind of bridge that gap and to help companies get involved with the games and get involved with our JCC too, because the JCC really offers a lot of programs.
So tell me a little bit about the multicultural engagement that you've had. Because I know that your son, not being Jewish, is very involved in the JCC. And
so we got involved with the JCC. We got involved with the JCC when my older son, Devin, the one who had all the surgeries, when he was a teenager, they didn't let him play basketball on the team at his middle school. And he went to the JCC because of his surgeries. They just thought he was going to get hurt, and they were very like, no, you can't play. And he went to the JCC. The JCC has a great program called the Gibberine United program for individuals, you know, of all ages, children through adults, with developmental and physical disabilities. And my son was able to play basketball at the J. And then once he was older, he coached the little kids, which was wonderful. And so then my son Gary's been going to summer camp at the JCC. And you know what I love about it, I'm not Jewish, I'm Catholic, but my son was very intrigued by Judaism and he wanted to learn. And I said, absolutely, let's you know, go to the J and learn it. And he's very involved in Maccabi Zaire. He's been doing it for a few years now, where he goes every Saturday to the J. And it's really, the JCC is open to everyone, really. And it's just guided by Jewish values, which are wonderful values, by the way. And my family just found a second home there. So I really love it there.
For those of you who don't know what the Maccabi Games, it's like a mini Olympic Games where you bring all the kids to play against each other.
From all over the world.
From all over the world and from other Jewish organizations or JCCs. When I was in Colombia, I used to put together the Maccabi Games in Colombia.
Really? That's very cool, Gladys.
I remember the 25th anniversary was huge because we made it international.
Yeah, we have a lot of different countries coming. The games will take place in Broward County, and we're looking for volunteers and host families. And, it's, for me, I'm very honored to be part of the team at the JCC. Um, I've been working with them for 3 years. I'm their corporate partnerships consultant. And, I get to work with a lot of different companies that have these great, pillars on supporting our community, and just bridging that together with the services that the JCC provides is phenomenal.
How do they get in touch with you? If they want to participate, go volunteer, how do they get in touch with you?
They can email me. If you can put my email, on your screen,
I will
it's
put
at
contact information.
cosmomarketing.com. Mhm.
But also, I understand that you're looking for families that can host the kids that are coming in from other
Correct.
states.
Correct. The JCC is looking for Jewish families that can host, and volunteers. Volunteers can be, they don't have to be Jewish. It could be from anywhere. I think that the host families is because they have to be kosher. But volunteers can be anyone who wants to volunteer. They just have to, submit their information, and they'll get in contact with them.
Who do they contact if they want to volunteer or put up their house?
Sure, they can go to the JCC's website, dpjcc.org. That's a David Posnack JCC in Davie, and they can just look up on the website, and they can request information from there.
So it's not like having somebody, but I remember that I used to host kids, and at one time there were 7 kids in my house. And it was
That's
a
wonderful.
very unique experience because you learn from others. It was like having play dates and sleepovers for like a week. But once they go off, cool. You just get them at night, and that's it. It's not that you have to take care of them the whole day. So if you really
But it's really, you know what? I think it's a really good experience. I know one family. I went to the JCC Maccabi games in San Diego with the team from South Florida from our JCC, and I know that one of my colleagues at the J, their son stayed, even though the parents were there because they were working. The son was participating, so he stayed at somebody's home, and now that family's coming, and their son is going to stay at their home. No, so you see,
yeah,
it's just a great experience, right?
Well, some of my kids' best friends came out of that, and they're still connected because they stayed. And it was back and forth. If they came to Bogota or they came to another city, they stayed with their friends, and they came here, and I used to call them my adopted kids.
Yeah, no, I met a young man from Israel on my trip for the 2022 Maccabi games in San Diego. And his mom and his parents were there, but him and I became really good friends. He was like, I don't know, 18, 19, maybe 17, 18 years old. And him and I became friends. And we went to SeaWorld. That was one of the trips that we did when we were out there. My kids weren't with me. So I spent the whole night hanging out with this young man and his family. And I didn't realize his mom was taking pictures of us talking, having dinner, And then when they went back to Israel, we exchanged WhatsApp numbers and emails and she sent me all of our pictures. It was really a cool experience. And he was part of the Access Games because last year, I'm sorry, was the first year where the JCC Maccabi Games also has the Access Games for young teenagers with disabilities, with developmental disabilities. Okay. And so he was part of the Access Games. He was special needs. So he's going to be coming now from Israel and participating in our JCC Maccabi Games. Is
your son participating in something, or he's too old now?
He's too old. He's 26.
Are the kids that he's been coaching, I'm assuming that they're participating?
Oh, he coached kids a while back. He coached, oh my gosh. I used to come home and he would be wearing a suit, and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, one of my kids is graduating from 8th grade, or one of my kids is graduating from 6th grade. Or I'm going to a bar mitzvah. It was like he was going to all of these events. The parents were inviting him. It's just been a really good experience, I've worked with many great charities. I started my career at Here's Help with Footy, who was the Y100 morning show host. Okay. And I got into radio with Footy. I became his publicist. I did all his PR fundraising for Here's Help. And again, there as well, I worked with a great team. We had a great board and a great team of executive leadership as well. and we did the Bubbles and Bones Gala and the Wingdings. And I was lucky enough to work on the last couple of Wingdings before they stopped hosting them. But then we hosted the Bubbles and Bones Gala and the Footies Wingding Golf Tournament. And then from there, I worked for a few years also with the Dan Marino Foundation, which, because my son is on the spectrum and my son was a patient at the hospital, was also a really good fit at the time. And then my son went to Marino campus for a while, and got some great, resources from there. He was able to get his first job that way, through going through all of the courses at Marino campus. It really helped him to blossom and opened up.
Okay.
But I feel like I'm in the, I feel like I've always been 10 years with Here's Help, 10 years with the Marino Foundation, and now I've been with the JCC for 3 years. And I have other clients. I have fantastic clients. I have other clients in the software business. I have developer clients. I have clients who have they're retailers, who have food products. So I mean, I love it. Obviously the charity thing, you can tell from my,
you can tell that it's your passion.
It's my passion. That's why my business is called Cosmo Marketing, because I cause movement in key markets. I've done campaigns, where like with working with clients like Badia Spices in the past, we've done international campaigns where a portion of the proceeds goes to charity. And I've been able to work on the back end on doing all of the public service announcements and the marketing for those campaigns. And I worked with Walgreens and I helped them with the diabetes walk for Walgreens. And I did those for like 4 or 5 years before COVID. COVID changed a lot of things,
COVID changed our lives.
But I've been involved in many events and with many different clients, and I love what I do. And I feel like I just turned 50 about 11 months ago, and I love the age that I am right now. People tell me, you're 50, some women don't want to. I love it. I'm enjoying my age. I'm enjoying my gray. I've been blonde for many years, and I stopped dyeing my hair. I just, I embrace life. I love life. I love change. I'm very loyal to my clients and my community, but I also like change. That's why I like working with different clients at the same time, because I get
to learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. Like people like you, Gladys, that we collaborate together. We can collaborate in the community on different projects, and those collaborations, to me, I don't feel like there's ever competition, even for people like you who do a lot. You and I do a lot of the same kind of work, because I feel that we each have our own magic. We each have our magic, and we bring it out. And when we join forces and we join those two magics together, it's like boom.
I've never seen it as competition. I've collaborated with many companies that do exactly what I do. And we learn from each other, and each one brings something to the table.
Well, look at when you and I had lunch the other day. We were like, idea.
Correct. And each one brings something. And what unites us is the love of what we do
and community.
It happen.
Absolutely.
So, Rixy, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I hope that with everything you do, we can keep on helping many people. And if anybody wants to get involved in the Maccabi Games, it's in the first week in August. So please contact the David Posnack JCC.
Or if anybody wants to support the JCC as well, not just the games are here, but we have programs all year long. We just as a sidebar, we're bringing a new program, and I wanted to share this before we go because it's very important to me and to the J. We're bringing us a program called Sunrise Camp for Lauderdale. And this is a program that does not exist in the state of Florida right now. It's a program for kids who have been diagnosed with cancer and are undergoing chemotherapy. Okay. And it's a camp. It's a 1-week camp in the winter and a 1-week camp in the spring. And they are able to go to this camp at the JCC, have fun for a week, and while they're getting their treatment, kind of like forget for a little while that they're going through this treatment. But they are also able to be joined by their siblings, so that they don't feel like they're not part of their siblings are not part of their camp. So that's another thing. If somebody wants to support that, it's a great program. We're going to start it now in the winter. They can reach out to me, and my email is rixys@cosmomarketing.com, and you can share that as well, Gladys.
I will. Thank you so much.
Thank
To
you.
everyone, above all, stay safe, and until next week. Have a great day.
Bye.